Star Trek Online's 10th Anniversary Bundle is widely regarded as one of, if not the best ship bundles available in the game, but it's also important to remember that the 10th Anniversary Bundle is going to be 5 years old in the coming months, so I thought I would take the opportunity to kind of go over the 10th Anniversary Bundle and kind of try to figure out for you guys, is it still worth it? So to start off with, we're going to do a little overview of the 10th anniversary itself, because one thing that people often get confused about is that there are actually two different versions of the 10th anniversary bundle. The standard version, which just comes with the 10 starships, and a premium version that comes with the 10 legendary starships, plus all this extra stuff here. So with all this extra stuff, this is an extra $100 on top of the already very expensive bundle. And honestly, just, this is under my advice, I would not buy the premium bundle. Don't worry about it. It just comes with a bunch of ship slots and a bunch of crap you're never going to use, and a lot of stuff that's just kind of a, not a lot considering how much this costs. Like, it comes with 100 low-buy, which is not a lot of low-buy, 10,000 dilithium ore, that is slightly over a day's worth of dilithium, so that's hard. That's nothing. It comes with some Phoenix prize packs, which again, you can literally get those just for the cost of dilithium. Yeah, honestly, I would not bother with the premium version, because the standard version comes with all 10 ships, also comes with 10 ship slots, so you'll be able to, use those ships without having to worry about getting additional ship slots, though it is important to remember that those ship slots are single character unlocks, so they will only apply to whatever character you put them on, so just be mindful when you're picking up this bundle, if you choose to do so, where you're putting those ship slots. The standard price for the 10th anniversary bundle is 30,000 Zen, at least the standard version. So that's about $300 US, and the premium version goes up to 45,000 Zen, so that's $450. But obviously, you never want to buy anything from Star Trek Online at full price. So generally, you can find the 10th anniversary bundle when it's available at a 35% off sale, lowering it down to 19,500 Zen. So that's about a little under $200. Leaving the premium version of the bundle at $300, which again, I would not recommend buying the premium version of the 10th anniversary bundle. It comes with a lot of extra fluff that is not important. Now, what comes in the standard version of the 10th anniversary bundle are these 10 legendary starships right here. And what I'm going to be doing in this video is going over each and every one of these ships and kind of giving you an idea of how they hold up in the current state of the game. Are these still good? Do they have anything useful on them? And, generally that kind of stuff that I usually do on any sort of review video. But this is going to be sort of, with the current state of the game in mind, because this is a much older bundle, but still a very popular bundle. So I want to kind of go over and see just how worth it are these ships still. Starting with the legendary Constitution Miracle Worker Light Cruiser. This is the legendary version of the original series Constitution and the motion picture era Constitution. This, in my opinion, was one of the bigger disappointments of the 10th anniversary bundle, even when it was new. It has a 4-4 weapons layout, double Miracle Worker seating. It can't use dual cannons because it is a normal cruiser, which is still a restriction I think is really dumb, and I feel like they really need to re-examine that, because having a whole type of starship that can't use dual cannons, I think is just, it's really dumb in the current state of the game. It's a really stupid restriction. I think that needs to go. That's a rant for another video. Anyway, the console and trait on it really aren't anything special. Like it does come with the console and trait from this ship, as well as the older versions of the Constitution. That is the Temporal Light Cruiser and the old Tier 2 Exeter class, which it comes with both of their consoles and the starship trait off of the original Temporal Light Cruiser, none of which are particularly useful. The console off of the Temporal Light Cruiser can be kind of useful if it's like one of those things that you already have on your account and you're setting up a new character. It can be good for like setting up an early level character, but it's not something you're going to be wanting to use a whole lot in endgame level content. The starship trait off of this thing, again, not super useful. It's okay if you like beam builds, but it's not something that really holds up in the current state of the meta. So honestly, my overall impression of this ship is that it's not that great in the current state of the game. Again, double Miracle Worker is kind of a killer on this thing. That's too much Miracle Worker seating with how ineffective Miracle Worker seating is. This is something I know a number of people have been saying that at this point that Miracle Worker really needs a revamp, and if they're not going to do that, double Miracle Worker is just not a good option here. And plus, 4-4 layout also not a great option here. It's not good. It's vastly inferior compared to its promo ship counterpart, the Temporal Light Cruiser, which you can also get on an account unlock because that ship is also available in the MUD's Cruiserweight Choice Pack. So honestly, if it's a choice between this or the promo version, I would get the promo version, especially because the ship's got better stats, and also with that MUD's Choice Bundle, you also, in the same Choice Pack option, you also get the Klingon and Romulan versions of the Temporal Light Cruiser. So that's the TOS version of the D7 and the Talis Warbird. So yeah, you're getting a little, you're not getting as many ships there, but you're still getting some additional ships with that MUD's bundle. Obviously, not everyone's going to be able to afford a MUD's bundle because they are very expensive, but I do mention it just because if you're looking at the 10th anniversary bundle, and looking to spend that kind of money, it doesn't seem like outside the realm of possibilities that you would be looking at a MUD's bundle as a possibility as well. However, if you're wanting something similar to the ship, stats-wise, wanting some sort of Miracle Worker ship, I did include some budget options that you can find in the C-Store. The Gagarin Miracle Worker battle cruiser, I feel like still holds up reasonably well. It is also double Miracle Worker, which is not great, but at the same time, this thing is a 5-3 battle cruiser, which is pretty nice. Additionally, there's also the more recently released Achilles Miracle Worker Heavy Destroyer. Now, this one isn't a cruiser, so it's not going to be quite as tanky as either this or the Gagarin, but it is also double Miracle Worker. It's more tactical focused, and it also has the virtue of having the best experimental weapon in the game currently, so Achilles is definitely worth looking at. Next up, the legendary Constitution Temporal Flight Deck Carrier. This one, it holds up a lot better. It's a 5-3 weapons layout, 2 hangar bays because it's a flight deck carrier, double temporal seating, which is a lot more, you get a lot more out of this, especially with the current meta being so focused on console cooldowns, using the combination of unconventional systems and the console off of the Vovine. So temporal is really going to feed into unconventional systems really well. And plus you can do some pretty nice things with it too, like recursive shearing, which just packs a punch if you're in the right setup. So that could be a really nice ability to have. So double temporal is pretty nice to have. Having the ship will unlock the advanced phasers and advanced disruptors on your entire account. The ship itself will come equipped with the advanced phasers, but you'll be able to purchase more of the advanced phasers in the dilithium store if you have this, and you'll also be able to pick up the advanced disruptors from the dilithium store as well by having the ship. You do not need to own the D7, the Discovery D7 in order to have in order to get access to the advanced disruptors. You can get this by just having the legendary Constitution here, but you'll have to buy them out of the dilithium store. You won't be able to get them just right off the ship like the D7 is. Console and trait really aren't super impressive on this thing. There is, it is unfortunate because there's no Klingon version of this ship. Yeah, because the Klingon version of the Discovery D7 has the Ruin of Our Enemies, but there's no legendary version of that, and they did not put that on the legendary version of the Constitution. So that's a little disappointing there. But if you really want Ruin of Our Enemies, that is also available in the MUD's Disco Infernal bundle, along with the original version of the ship, which is a Miracle Worker flight deck carrier, which, honestly, Miracle Worker, it's not... Like I said in the previous section, it really needs a revamp. And even as a primary specialization, I don't really look at it as fondly as I used to. So honestly, I just from a pure like DPS standpoint, I feel like this is the better option compared to this version versus the promo ship version of the Discovery Constitution. I feel like more people would end up being happy with this just because, one, this is a account unlock, and two, temporal. I like, temporal is frankly better in my opinion. Downsides with this one is that there really aren't a lot of great budget alternatives for flight deck carriers. In fact, this ship right here is the only flight deck carrier in the game that even has temporal seating at all. So it kind of stands out there. So really the only thing that you're going to get even a kind of a close feel with this is either the old flight deck carriers, the Silic, the Blackguard, and the Pralum. But none of those are like, off faction ships, like, they're Tellarite, Orion, and Suliban ships, which is kind of weird. But yeah, they're also pretty old too. None of them are full spec, and they're kind of dated. Alternatively, there's also the Typhon Command Escort Carrier, much more recent release. It's gonna have a little bit more of a different vibe because it's an escort carrier, not a flight deck carrier, which flight deck carriers are basically cruisers with 2 hangar bays, whereas escort carriers are escorts with 2 hangar bays and no experimental weapons. So a little bit of a different vibe, but with this kind of ship, you're really just wanting to have 2 hangar bays so you can have a bunch of pets. So you'll be able to pull off that vibe with the Typhon pretty well. Oh, plus Typhon has like a must-have starship trait for carrier builds, so like there's another bonus to the budget alternative here. Next is the legendary Kelvin Timeline Constitution Intel Battlecruiser. Long name. This is another one that I feel like holds up fairly well in the current state of the game. It's a battlecruiser with a 5-3 weapons layout, double intel seating on this one, so it's going to be pretty good for an energy weapon build, and also mesh really well with unconventional systems, because you'll have stuff like OSS, or the override subsystem safeties, to boost your energy levels for your weapons power, as well as unconventional systems triggers like ionic turbulence and what's the other one? I'm blanking on the name of it right now, and I don't feel like looking it up. So the console and traits off of this thing, they're kind of a mixed bag. The one of the consoles off of this, which actually originally comes from the previous version of this ship, the command version of the Kelvin Constitution, that is a meta starship, or a meta console for EPG and science builds because of its passive buffs to max aux damage, or max aux power, and bonus damage to auxiliary for exotic abilities. Because while the click ability isn't really useful for that type of build, those passives that give off extra aux power and bonus exotic damage, they're few and rare to find, so science builds will take those wherever they can get them. But the starship traits are nothing special. Like you would think I would be fond of the starship trait that comes off of this ship, Heard I Need Help, which summons in a Kelvin Timeline copy of your own ship, but it has the obnoxious mechanic of it only triggers when your health is at 50% or lower. I hate traits like that. And it also has a 2-minute cooldown. So normally that would have been really great for my my Odyssey Summoner build if it weren't for those obnoxious restrictions. So yeah, still going to call that starship trait useless. Another downside with this ship is that this was released before the release of the Kelvin Timeline Constitution 2, which is the one from the Enterprise A from Star Trek Beyond. So it will not include that costume, console, or starship trait from that ship. Overall, I feel like this is still a pretty solid ship, and of the various Kelvin constitutions in the game, I feel like this is probably the best option just for sheer DPS. I know the original version is okay if you really want to do like a tank build, but for more DPS focused stuff, I feel like this is the better option. But the downside of this ship is that there is a budget alternative that I feel like more people will prefer even more. That is the Bozeman Intel Heavy Frigate. The Bozeman is a C-store ship, so it's a lot cheaper, and it's also got double intel, but it's a frigate, so it has a ton of universal seating on it. So its seating is going to be much more flexible than what you're going to get here on the Kelvin Constitution. So that's something to consider there. Next up is the legendary Glenn Temporal Operative Science Vessel. And as far as science vessels, this one holds up pretty well too. It's got a 4-2 layout, which is rather rare on science vessels. 4 weapon slots in the front is still pretty uncommon for anything that isn't a spearhead, which this isn't. This is a normal science vessel, which is kind of uncommon considering this is a variant of the Crossfield, whereas of the 4 versions of the Crossfield that are currently in the game, 2 of them are spearheads. But yeah, this is a temporal science vessel, which pairs really well with science builds, so that's really nice. It's also got a secondary command seat, so that can pair pretty nice with like Cytorp builds because it's a lieutenant commander command seat, so you can get like concentrate firepower in there, which is kind of nice. It's also got the console and trait from both the original Crossfield and the mirror Crossfield. Of those, the console and trait off the mirror Crossfield are okay. Like its starship trait is kind of decent for a Dusai build because it offers some buffs to exotic damage, but they're only Cat 1, and some extra haste buffs. But honestly, haste buffs are, the game is kind of oversaturated with haste buffs right now. So another trait with haste is really not going to be a huge game changer. The console on it, it's got some decent passives on it for phaser builds, having decent buffs to phaser damage and crit severity. But again, there are other stuff that is available in the game that you can get just as easily that will have better payoff, so it's not something I would go out of my way for in the current state of the game. But if that console and trait do appeal to you, there are other ways to get the Mirror Crossfield and thus its Starship trait and console, because the Mirror Crossfield is also available as a bundle exclusive for the 13th anniversary bundle. So overall, it's a decent ship, but this combo of Temporal Command is not bad, but honestly, for like more pure EPG stuff, you're going to want either more Temporal or Temporal Intel, which I feel like either the Rallus Temporal Dyson Science Destroyer or the Chekhov Intel Science Warship would probably be a better option for you, which again, those are both C-Store ships. Honestly, even the Premonition also has some serious upsides compared to this too. So honestly, again, those being C-Store ships, I would look at any of these three before I would like go out of my way to try to get my hands on this one, unless I'm like really after that Crossfield Space Barbie. Legendary Defiant Pilot Warship. Honestly, this one, it still looked on fairly favorably. It is a 5-3 warship, meaning it has, because it's a warship, it doesn't have an experimental weapon slot. It instead has a 5-3 weapons layout, which in the current state of the game actually isn't that great, because experimental weapon slots have become very valuable just because of how powerful certain experimental weapons have gotten, like the hexacannons off the Achilles, for example. I would much rather have those than another turret in the back. So really, this thing being a warship, just not as good as it used to be. Again, furthermore, this thing has double pilot seating, which also not great. Pilot is not really the curse that it used to be, but at the same time, that's a lot of pilot seating. You're never going to use that much of it. This would have been much better served with like a secondary intel seat or something. That's too much pilot seating. This ship does come with some interesting Starship traits on it. This comes with the Starship trait Overpowered and Overgun, which can be pretty good for an energy weapon build, but again, this is another one that has kind of fallen out of the meta just because there are other things you want to focus on more. So it's kind of nice for the sake of having it on like a new character or something where you just, you need as many Starship traits that are useful that you can get. So having this unlocked on your account is kind of nice to have, but it's not something I would go out of my way for the sake of the meta. Additionally, this ship also has Withering Barrage on it, which is a must-have Starship trait for cannon builds, especially if you like Cannon Scatter Volley, because Withering Barrage is the extension trait for CSV. Again, must have Starship trait right there, but it's also probably the easiest Starship trait to get in the game, because this thing's available on like 7 different ships, including this one, 3 of which are C-Store ships, and 1 of which is a free event ship that is available through the KDF recruitment event. So don't go out of your way to get Withering Barrage off of this thing. Wait for the KDF recruitment event to come around and get it off the Imchala refit. And additionally, this thing was released before the Adamant Heavy Raider was released into the C-Store, so it will not have the console trait or costume off of that ship. And speaking of the Adamant, honestly, I would probably pick up the Adamant before I would pick up this thing. Adamant is a much more powerful ship. It's a Heavy Raider. It has temporal intel. It has intel temporal seating on it, so it meshes really great with unconventional systems. So you can also do some powerful energy weapon stuff on that build too. It's also got a very powerful console, Agni Redistributor, which has had a checkered past, but it is back in the meta again, especially with how important console cooldowns have become with the meta. So being able to get that up as fast as possible, which you could do on the Adamant, is really important. Additionally, the Terran Eagle is also worth looking at as a budget alternative for this thing, because I mean that's another raider that will also have pilot maneuvers on it, so you can get kind of a similar vibe on this thing, but in a much more powerful package with the Eagle. Okay, Legendary Ross Command Exploration Cruiser, aka the Legendary Galaxy. This is by a long shot the biggest disappointment of this bundle, in my opinion. This was a 4-4 weapons layout on a standard cruiser. Can't equip dual cannons because, again, it's a cruiser. Double command seating, but that second command seat is only lieutenant level, so you're really not going to get much use out of that second seat. It was released before both the Terran Cygnus Battlecruiser and the World Razor Temporal Juggernaut, so it's not going to have the costumes, consoles, or traits of either of those ships. And honestly, the big thing with this ship is that its stats are they're nearly identical to the T6 Andromeda Exploration Cruiser, which was the C-Store version of this ship, and it's just literally there are almost no changes between the two. They just slightly tweaked the hull and shield modifier on this thing, moved the command seat from the lieutenant commander engineering seat to the commander engineering and the lieutenant science seat. That's all they did with this thing. Everything else on it is exactly the same. Even the movement stats are completely identical. This is, I don't want to sound like an asshole, but this is one of the laziest ships I've ever seen, because it's almost identical to the original C-Store version, and it, in my opinion, was one of the biggest disappointments of this bundle, and I'm still upset about it, honestly. The funny thing is, with a small change, you really could have made this kind of an interesting ship by moving this this second command seat over to the other engineering seat. That gives it even more command seating, but it gives you access to more of the high-level command abilities, meaning you would be able to use suppression barrage, call emergency artillery, and concentrate firepower all on the same build. And I'm sure someone's going to say, isn't that really overpowered? No, it's not, because it's still a freaking 4-4 cruiser with too much engineering seating. So no, it's not overpowered, but it would still be a nice change up to, you know, what this is now, because as it is, you're not going to get any use out of that that extra command seat. But moving it over to the lieutenant commander seat, you'd be able to get some more use out of it. Honestly, you want to make this ship really interesting, add a hangar bay to it. Like, you know, instead of exploration cruiser, turn it into a multi-mission cruiser. Obviously, they couldn't have done that back then because multi-mission cruisers didn't exist back then. The first one was the Clark, which didn't come out till, I think, like a year or two after this. But still, like, looking back on it, a hangar bay would have served this thing so much better. Budget alternatives, there's the Terran Cygnus. That's another T6 version of the Galaxy, which is available in the C-Store. Not a bad ship. It's a temporal battlecruiser, so it can pack a pretty decent punch, but I still don't like the seating on the Cygnus. The tactical seating on it is a little wonky, and it's still a little engineering heavy. Not nearly as bad as this one. It's just, I've never been totally sold on the Cygnus. Alternatively, if you're wanting another command cruiser that, you know, doesn't have terrible seating like this thing has, try the Justiciar Command Star Cruiser. That one has a pretty decent setup on it and can be turned into a really powerful tank. Now, since we're talking about what is basically a $200 bundle, I feel like it's worth mentioning that the World Racer, while it is still a lockbox ship that has yet to be put into a MUDs bundle, it is still worth pointing out that this is the most powerful version of the Galaxy class in the game. So if I was going after a specific ship for, you know, Galaxy Space Barbie, I'd go after the World Racer. At least if I were able to. I know it's still a lockbox ship, so it's very expensive, but at the same time, you know, the event campaign is still a thing. Next up is the legendary Intrepid Miracle Worker multi-mission science vessel. Say that 5 times fast, Jesus Christ. This one, honestly, I don't feel like is as good as the Glenn. It's a 3-3 science vessel, which really isn't that big of a deal because, you know, most science vessels are 3-3 layout. It also has a hangar bay because it's a multi-mission science vessel, but it has Miracle Worker pilot for the seating, neither of which are very good for science builds. Honestly, I don't know what the heck they were thinking with that combo. It's kind of crazy. Like, the only advantage that this would have for a science build is the extra console slot, because science builds are very dependent on the universal console. So the extra console slot is, you know, useful, but ugh. Yeah, some budget options. The Terran Trailblazer is a better version of the Intrepid. I would definitely go with that one. I forgot to put it on here, but honestly, the Eternal multi-mission science vessel, that's a temporal ship. That would also be a pretty good budget option for this instead. Moving on to the legendary Columbia Temporal Operative Escort, which this is the legendary version of the NX. This one is also one that holds up pretty well in the game currently. It's a 5-2 weapons layout with an experimental weapon because it's an escort. Double temporal seating, so a lot like the Discovery Constitution. Again, so it's going to mesh really well with unconventional systems and just general do-side nonsense, which is pretty fun to do. Definitely better than the original version of the NX, which is the T6 version was the NX refit out of the Low-Buy store. Again, definitely, this is definitely a better ship. This will also include the Starship trait off of the original version, which is preferential targeting, which can still be pretty decent for beam overload builds. I don't know if a lot of people still use this one. I don't really care about beam overload. You guys know I don't like single target builds, but I still think preferential targeting is worth looking at. Also, point defense bombardment warhead. This is a decent console for a torpedo build. So while both of those are also available on the original NX refit, you'll also get them on this as well. So yeah, it's a really good ship, pretty powerful ship. But again, just like the Kelvin Constitution, I feel like more of you are going to end up liking the budget version better, because the Atlantis Temporal Destroyer has everything this can do in the seating, but it's a bit better because instead of the double temporal that this thing has, Atlantis has temporal intel as a combo, which pairs really nicely together too. So it's going to feel a lot more like the Adamant, which again I said would also do better than the original version of the Defiant. And honestly, I feel like the Adamant would probably do better than this thing too, because Adamant is a heavy raider, so you get like raider flanking and a battle cloak. So yeah, I feel like Adamant would be a good budget alternative for this one as well. Now, going back to the disappointments of the bundle, the legendary Sovereign Miracle Worker Assault Cruiser. Guys, can you believe that we got a Science Dreadnought version of the Sovereign before we got a Battle Cruiser version with a 5-3 layout? Because I still can't. That is still crazy to me. Not that that Science Dreadnought version matters in this case, because the Lamar was released after the Legendary version came out, so it's not going to have that costume, console, or trait here on the Legendary version. But what the Legendary Sovereign does have is a 4-4 weapons layout, the inability to use dual cannons because it is just a standard cruiser. Literally, Assault Cruiser, stats-wise, means nothing. It's just an identifier because that's what the old Sovereign from the original T5 Sovereign was called. So in the current state of the game, that means nothing. It's just a standard cruiser. It includes the original Sovereign console set, which none of them are particularly powerful, but it is kind of interesting because the console set itself, the bonuses for it, actually give the ship a battle cloak, which is kind of neat, but you do have to use 3 underwhelming consoles to get it, so it's kind of a big price to pay for a battle cloak, in my opinion. But yeah, overall, this ship is very underwhelming. It's bad weapons layout, also really bad seating, because this is a Miracle Worker pilot combo and has way too much engineering and tactical seating, which is not something you see very often. Usually it's way too much of one or the other. Way too much of both is just... that's an accomplishment right there. That's just like, wow. It's horrible. So for budget alternatives, they're literally the same as the alternatives for the Miracle Worker Constitution at the beginning of the video. Check out the Gagarin or the Achilles. Either of them will do better than this thing. And the final ship in the 10th anniversary bundle is the legendary Verity Command Dreadnought Cruiser, aka the legendary Odyssey. Now, this is another one where I feel like it's kind of been overshadowed by later versions of it because... well, you guys know the Lexington is still my favorite ship in the game, but because this was released before Lexington, it does not have that console trait or costume on it. Not that that really matters. Really, it's Lexington's stats, I feel like, overshadow this thing more so, because while both have 4-4 weapons layout and have a hangar bay because they're both dreadnoughts, Verity does not have a lance weapon, and in a really weird decision, it only has one specialization seat, which, I mean, I remember going over this, it still baffles me today, because that's a big difference between the Verity and the Lexington, is that Lexington is a Miracle Worker ship with a secondary intel seat. Verity is a command dreadnought, but it doesn't have a secondary seat. It's literally just the command seat. This is not only that, but this is the only ship in the 10th anniversary bundle that does not have a second specialization seat, and I am so confused as to why. It seems like a needless way to just make this ship underpowered for some reason. And really, they could have given it literally any specialization for the secondary seat, and it still would have been more favorable than it is right now. Like, seriously, Miracle Worker would have been kind of nice just because narrow sensor bands, you could use that. Intel definitely would have been nice. Be able to get override subsystem safeties on here would have been really nice. Actually, even Pilot would have been kind of nice too, because that would have fed into my Odyssey spam build, which is something I really want. Like, don't get me wrong, the Verity is still a pretty decent ship, being a full command ship and a dreadnought, so it's got that hangar bay. It's just, it feels weird. Like, it feels like it's missing a piece because it doesn't have a secondary specialization seat. It feels really weird given how and when the ship was released. It makes no sense to me. The only thing I can think of is that maybe it's because this ship just comes with so much stuff, because it comes with all of the consoles and starship traits from both the T5 and T6 versions of the Odyssey. So that's like 6 different consoles and 3 different starship traits, not including the starship trait original to this ship on its own. Yeah, and honestly, that's the T6 version. That's the flagship. That's the flagship technology set, which is a pretty good console set, especially since it's been unbound from the Odyssey itself. So that's a pretty solid console set. And one of the traits in there too, the one off the Endeavor, supercharged weapons, can be a pretty decent budget trait on it too. So it comes with some pretty decent stuff, but I mean, it doesn't feel like a reason to purposely nerf the ship, because I mean, it's already available in this gigantic bundle. Like, maybe if it were available individually, that could have been a good reason to not give it that second specialization seat. But given that it is part of the larger 10th anniversary bundle, it just seems needless. Anyway, still a decent ship. You can still put a decent tank build on it, but this ship is definitely overshadowed by its budget counterpart and, you know, mirror counterpart, the Terran Lexington Dreadnought cruiser. Definitely a more offensive based ship. Definitely gonna have I feel like more people are gonna have fun in that one, and plus it's available in the C store, so it's a lot cheaper. If you're wanting to look at more command ships, particularly ones with a hangar bay, the Baran and the Clark are both worth looking at. They kind of have some of the similar problems that the Lexington here has, whereas it's either limited or no secondary specialization seating, but at the same time, these are C-store ships, so you don't have to pay nearly as much for either of these as you would for this. Actually, another one worth looking at that I didn't include in here, if you are wanting a tank build that is also a command dreadnought, really the ship you're really wanting to look for is the Terran Styx dreadnought, which that's also available in the 13th anniversary bundle. So yeah, that is the 10th anniversary bundle from the viewpoint of being, you know, almost into 2025. And, you know, like, some of those ships are still pretty good, but a lot of those ships I don't think hold up nearly as well as they used to. And there are still a few in there that weren't that good in the first place, unfortunately to say. Obviously, whether or not it's worth it to get this bundle is going to be up to you, because there is still a lot of value in it, just for the sheer amount of ships that you get that you can use all the way through to endgame. Like, just because they're not like the most amazing ships in the game doesn't mean you can't make them work with the right build. That's true with pretty much any tier 6 ship, and it is absolutely still true with these 10 ships as well. So that, plus the fact that they come with all that extra stuff from the older versions of those ships, it's still a huge monetary value. It's just whether or not those ships themselves are worth it to you. So really, the decision has to be yours. I know, I'm sure some of you are expecting me to tell you what to think, but no, make up your own mind. I'm sorry. I'm just here to give you the information. Yeah, let me know what you think down below in the comments, and while you're down there, be sure to like and subscribe and hit that bell for notifications. If you'd like to further support the channel, hit that join button to become a member, hit the link to the merch store down below, or if you're ever shopping on the Epic Game Store, be sure to use my content creator code STU1701, or check out any of the other affiliate links down below in the pinned comment. Either way though, thank you so much for watching. My name's Stu, and I will see you guys next time.